to be rolled out in the UK, but what impact might it have worldwide?
This is the BBC World Service, the world's radio station.
Welcome to OS with Emma Vardy, live from the floor of the BBC newsroom. Now, since that cabinet meeting in Israel, which ran late into last night and resulted in the news that Israel would take over Gaza City, well, our newsroom here has been busy taking in reaction from all around the world, busy with the commentary on what it all means. And of course, we are once again seeing more stark imagery of the devastated territory of Gaza. Now, for the journalists sitting around me in this newsroom, reporting from within Gaza remains out of reach because Israel, well, it does not allow reporters in to see for themselves what is happening. But here on this programme, on OS, we will once again be reaching out to people inside the war zone, also to those in Israel, to hear some greatly differing perspectives on this difficult conflict. And we'll be answering some of your questions too. This is BBC OS.
BBC News, I'm John Shea. There's growing criticism of the Israeli government's decision to step up its war against Hamas by taking control of Gaza City. One of Israel's staunchest allies, Germany, has halted military exports to Israel that could be used in Gaza. The European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen urged Benjamin Netanyahu's government to reconsider. In Israel itself, families of those held hostage by Hamas warn that the plan could lead to catastrophe. 6 members of Efrat Machikawa's family were kidnapped. One of them died. She says the war must end.
It's incredible to think that anyone from our government wants this to continue. All we want is for the release of all hostages, those who were murdered for burial and those that are barely still alive for rehabilitation.
The aims of the plan include the disarmament of Hamas, the return of all hostages, and the establishment of an alternative civilian administration. It will involve displacing 1 million Palestinians. The plan was approved by a majority vote of the Israeli Security Cabinet after a 10-hour meeting. UN officials have held talks with the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which has been widely criticised for its food distribution effort in recent months in the Gaza Strip. Hundreds of Palestinians have been killed trying to collect food since the GHF began work in May. Imogen Folks reports.
With famine reportedly spreading across the Strip, UN aid agencies are increasingly desperate to get supplies in. But the meeting with the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is a big shift. The UN has repeatedly warned that GHF's aid distribution, during which hundreds of Palestinians have been shot, is dangerous, dehumanizing, and fails to help the most vulnerable. On Wednesday, the medical charity Doctors Without Borders produced a detailed report documenting deaths and injuries at GHF sites witnessed by its own medical teams.
Donald Trump's deadline for Russia to agree a ceasefire in Ukraine or face more sweeping sanctions is due to expire today. The president hasn't clarified whether he'll carry out his threat to penalise Moscow and its trading partners. Speaking to the BBC, Ukraine's former president Petro Poroshenko urged Mr. Trump to push ahead if Vladimir Putin failed to respond.
3 things. Weapons. Second, sanctions. Third, new financial support of Ukraine. And 2 more, promising, demonstrating that the transatlantic integration of Ukraine in NATO is the fact that Putin cannot blackmail the whole free world. And with this effective sanction, we can stop Putin's ability to finance the war.
World News from the BBC. Media reports say a Chinese billionaire banker who vanished into detention more than 2 years ago has been freed. This hasn't yet been officially confirmed. Here's our Asia-Pacific editor, Mickey Bristow.
Bao Fan disappeared in February 2023. A year later, the bank he founded, China Renaissance Holdings, said he'd resigned from all roles for health and family reasons, although it didn't say where he was. The Chinese authorities have never given a proper account of his whereabouts or why he seemed to be under detention. The banker's experience inevitably rattled the Chinese business elite and is a reminder that even the most wealthy and successful can suddenly go missing in China.
Record rainfall has hit parts of southern Japan, causing floods that prompted evacuation warnings. The downpours follow a heatwave in many parts of the country. The BBC's Shaima Khalil reports from Tokyo.
More than 120,000 residents in Kirishima City in the southwestern Kagoshima prefecture were urged to evacuate. Local media footage showed muddy, fast-flowing water inundating homes, with cars partially submerged. Some road links have been severed, isolating several communities. Local police said multiple houses had collapsed in the area, adding that a rescue operation was in place. Domestic flights at Kagoshima Airport were cancelled. Japan's meteorological agency has urged residents to remain vigilant despite the emergency warning being downgraded, saying that heavy rain was set to continue in the southwestern Kyushu region, including in Kagoshima through the weekend.
Scientists have found compelling evidence of a giant new planet in a neighbouring star system, the closest to our Sun. It was spotted by astronomers using NASA's James Webb Space Telescope. It's thought to be similar to Saturn with a thick gas cloud. It's about 4.5 light years from Earth. The giant planet had been detected previously, but it disappeared, probably obscured by its star. BBC News.
Hello and welcome to OS on the BBC World Service with me, Emma Vardy. Now, our newsroom, where I'm sitting here, well, it's been very busy today with the news, of course, coming in on Gaza and Israel. And of course, last night, while Israel's security cabinet was locked away, giving its backing to the plan to take over Gaza's largest city, on the streets of Israel, at dozens of locations, people had come out to protest. And it was another one of those visual representations of this deep divide in opinion on Israel's actions in Gaza, something that's echoed around the world. Now, today, inside Gaza, there is fear and defiance over what is likely to be the first phase in a full Israeli takeover of the territory in its war against Hamas. But Israel, well, it hasn't said when the takeover will begin. Reports in Israeli media say the military will not move into Gaza City immediately, but will instead order residents to evacuate first. Well, let's bring in our correspondent in Jerusalem. Emir Nader is going to help us understand a bit more about this. Emir, what is your understanding of what their plans may now look like to take over Gaza City and the kind of timeline we could expect?
Well, it's a plan that's somewhat light on detail. It's a plan essentially to conquer, as you've said, to conquer Gaza City, to take it over, to occupy it. The reporting from military sources that we're hearing suggests that this would happen over a period of 2 months. It needs to take that long, partly because it's going to involve this mammoth task that could have really untold humanitarian consequences for the estimated 1 million Palestinians who live in Gaza City and in the area surrounding it. That's around half of Gaza's Palestinians. They will be forced to move down south towards an area around Mawasi, areas where there are already huge tent encampments, and indeed many of the people who will be forced to move, they've been displaced multiple times already in the war. Many of them are living in tents around Gaza City, so it's going to be the most a vast operation to move all of these people. And it's been announced as part of a wider plan, which is even lighter on details, really, which is 5 principles given by Prime Minister Netanyahu, which includes the disarmament of Hamas, the release of the hostages, and ultimately handing over the Gaza Strip, its control, to Arab states. But of those points, there is very little detail. All we know now is that the government has decided that the army will go in, clear Gaza City, ultimately then lay siege to whoever remains, and is hoping that the pressure will help it retrieve the Israeli hostages that remain.
Emma, we've heard plenty of warnings today about the potential catastrophic consequences for people living in Gaza of stepping up the military operation there even further. What are you gauging about the split in opinion inside Israel from the public? We saw those demonstrations last night. How much opposition is there? How much support is there for this move?
Well, consistently we see in opinion polling here in Israel that there is a majority that backs a ceasefire deal with Hamas that would see the hostages returned and an end to the war, which isn't obviously the track that Prime Minister Netanyahu is taking with this escalation of the war. And in the days leading up to this announcement, we've seen on numerous occasions security chiefs, former heads of the chiefs of staff of the Israeli army, heads of security services signing letters, issuing calls to President Trump and others, saying that the war should end and that this is a hasty decision that would bring disaster for Israel. And as you mentioned, we're seeing more and more daily protests by hostage families, as we have seen throughout the war. But what we aren't seeing, essentially, is this translate into a much wider mass movement on the streets of Israel. There is obviously support for the hostage families, but it doesn't yet seem to have touched a nerve amongst mass public opinion. And indeed, there is a mixed picture in the polling as well. We've seen other polling suggesting that 80% of Israeli Jews are not troubled by the reports and scenes of starvation in Gaza. There are some clearly who back the pursuit, or at least the direction of the war that Prime Minister Netanyahu is pursuing. So it's hard to say that we're going to see some mass campaign of civil disobedience, despite the fact that we are seeing in general a support for an end to the war as soon as possible.
Emmett, I know you have to dash off and speak to other BBC programmes. Thank you for joining us today. Now, as we heard there, the plan by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government to take over Gaza City does face some opposition within Israel itself, including, we know, from military officials and, of course, from the hostages' families. Now, Yehuda Cohen's son, Nimrod Cohen, is one of the hostages being held by Hamas.
Every few months, there's a new plan. Every few months, there's a new target from the cabinet. Well, it's not really a cabinet, it's more a Politburo. Netanyahu is just playing for time. I'm very disappointed from Donald Trump, who promised about nearly a year ago. He's